right up until they'd made enviable society matches. Seraphina, Cecily, Celeste, Celine, and Sophie. The soiled S's, named for the coal dust they'd been born into, now reigning over London as a duchess, a marchioness, a countess, and the wife of the wealthiest horse breeder in Britain. And then there was Cecily, who'd spent a decade flouting tradition and title and rules, and the most dangerous of the daughters, because she had no interest in the games the aristocracy played. She did not concern herself with fabricated opponents who glared at her from the opposite ends of ballrooms. She did not have the same goals as the rest of society. Reckless Cecily. She did not relegate herself to the shelf of spinsterhood, nor to the outer edges of Mayfair, where the aged and ruined lived out their days. Wild Cecily. Instead, she remained rich and titled and merry, with seemingly no interest in the opinions of those around her, unwilling to be tamed by mother, sister, companion, or community. Scandalous Cecily. Censure did not take, nor contempt nor disapproval, which left the aristocracy no choice but to accept her. Bored Cecily. Not bored, not that night. Boredom might have brought her to Vauxhall, but not alone. She'd have come with a friend, with a dozen of them. She'd have come for raucous entertainment and a whisper of trouble, but nothing like what she wanted that evening. Nothing like what clawed at her, making her want to seek out the worst kind of trouble, tempt it, scream at it. Frustrated Cecily. Angry Cecily. Embarrassed Cecily. In the worst possible way, by a man. A tall, broad, green-eyed, irritating man in shirt sleeves and waistcoat, and maybe a silly American-style hat that didn't at all suit in Mayfair, but was distractingly good at revealing the angle of an altogether too square jaw. Far too square. Unrefined in the extreme. The only man she'd ever wanted and couldn't win. So much for Sexily. But she absolutely refused to suffer her disappointments in public. That was the kind of thing other people did, not Cecily. Sesily Talbot picked herself up, painted her face, and went to Vauxhall. Of course, if she weren't so busy suffering that particular evening's disappointment in private, she would have noticed that she was being watched and manoeuvred and guided long before the stilt walker stepped out of the shadows of the tall trees lining the path that led to the rear section of Vauxhall, the Dark Walk. In the decade that Cecily had attended Vauxhall, the majority of visits had involved slipping the notice of parent, chaperone, sister or friend, and darting down the ever-darkening path to the place where events moved from performed to private, away from fireworks and circus acts and hot air balloons to something more improper, something that might be considered sordid. In all those years, she'd never once seen a performer this far along the path, this deep into the darkness. Certainly not as the clock neared midnight on the last week of the Vauxhall season, when the lateness of the hour did nothing to lessen the number of people in the gardens, and performers should be occupied with entertaining throngs of revellers, marvelling at the sheer, lush temptation of the place. And yet, there'd been a dancer and a fire-eater, and now there was a stilt-walker, with her enormous wig, and her extreme maquillage, and her delighted smile, and "Not this path, lady!" And that's when Cecily knew. She pulled up short, tilting to look up at the performer high above her, somehow impossibly dressed in massive, magnificent skirts that would threaten to fell a perfectly ordinary woman on her own 2 feet. "Not any paths tonight, though, is it?" A big laugh, made bigger as it rained down upon Cecily in the darkness, carried on the cool autumn breeze and punctuated by the bright fireworks that had begun in another part of the gardens, summoning the masses to marvel at them. Cecily was not interested in the sky. "Or is there a different path for me tonight?" The laugh became a knowing smile, and the stilt-walker turned away. There was no question that Cecily would follow, suddenly imagining herself an arrow loosed from a bow, away from the target she'd chosen, and instead aimed for somewhere else. Something else. And though anger and frustration, and that thing she would not ever admit to feeling, still burned hot in her breast, Cecily could not help her.